All right. Well, I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel retired Rob Z-Man Zettel, author of American MiG Pilot, inside the top secret Air Force Red Eagles MiG Squadron. Sir, good morning. Hello. Welcome aboard. We're happy to talk to you.
Glad to be here, Mover. Thanks for having me aboard.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you've had quite the career, something that's near and dear to my heart, a lot of red air, because I spent most of my flying days doing red air, and you actually did real red air with the real red jets.
Yeah, it was quite the experience, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and you talk about it a lot in your book, which is available now. You were talking before we started. It's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere you can get a book, right? It's all various formats. What
sure.
inspired you to write it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And basically, it started off just as we didn't really have a plan on writing a book. But I had all these stories, that, as I'm sure we all have. And I started jotting down a couple of notes, and soon the notes became a few pages, which turned into, I thought, man, this could be a chapter someday of maybe a book. And over the years, I just started putting them together. And finally, I had about 6 or 8 what I would call chapters, episodes of something. And somebody, I had shared them with Gail Peck. He's actually one of the first commanders of the Red Eagles, who was, unfortunately passed away about a year and a half ago. But he encouraged me. He says, Z-Man, you got to turn this into a book. I think people want to read it. So that's kind of the short of it. I didn't set out as having a plan to write it, but kind of went from there.
That's awesome. So we like to talk about kind of the origin story. Were you into aviation as a kid, or was it something you picked up later as you grew up?
I wasn't into aviation at all, other than just, watching movies and making model airplanes. In fact, no one in my family had been in aviation at all. In fact, I'd never got on a single airplane till the day I left to go to college.
Wow.
But way back in high school, a couple of years earlier, guidance counselor asked me at the end of my junior year, asked me, hey, Rob, what do you want to do, a year from now when you graduate from high school? What do you want to do? I said, well, I'll probably go on to college. My 2 older brothers are going to Notre Dame. And I thought, hey, I'll just do that. How hard can it be? Well, he thought about it for a while, and he says, okay, but what past college? What do you want to do for a career? I'm 16 years old, and you don't think much past a week down the road, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's like 5 years from now. That's like an eternity. So I'm thinking, well, and the first thing I thought about is, I think I'd like to be a pilot. And he sat up in his chair, put it back a little bit, and he thought, a pilot? And then he asked me another hard question. Well, what kind of pilot? And I'm thinking, geez, I don't know. And I figured the Navy or the Air Force would train me. So I thought, well, no, Air Force, Navy, I'll be one of those. And he thought about it for a while. And honestly, and I'm sure he had good intentions, he thought that to get there, I'd have to go through either Naval Academy in Annapolis or Colorado Springs. And while I was a good student, I wasn't burning up the course. So he thought, you know what, you're probably going to have a tough time getting in there. And even if you do, the attrition is pretty high. So maybe you ought to think about doing something else. That was really what happened. And so I walk out of there, and fast forward a few months, my older brother, Mark, who's getting ready to be a freshman at the University of Notre Dame, gets this big packet in the mail. And it says Air Force ROTC. I had no idea what it was. He didn't either. And he actually threw it in a garbage bin. And luckily, I just happened to be there. I said, what was that? He says, some crap from the Air Force. I go, Air Force? What does the Air Force have to do at Notre Dame? Anyway, I open it up. I dump out all the brochures on the kitchen table, and I look at it and I go, there's a program here. It says if I go to college, I qualify, meet all the requirements, I get out of school in 4 years, they'll send me to pilot training. He says, yeah, that's what it says. I go, I'm all in. So I rip out the little, back in those days, had those little tear out postcards in the middle of an envelope. I send that into someplace called Maxwell Air Force Base. And like now I'm 17, like any 17-year-old, you forget about it. Well, that led to, about 4 months later, I get a letter in the mail. Mark, Air Force ROTC and basically says, hey, if you want to apply for this scholarship and be in a program, you got to go to this Air Force base on your own and take a test, take a physical, and we'll see if you, well, that's what led me to get into the Air Force ROTC program. I had no clue.
That's
And
awesome.
again, I had at that time, I had never even been on an airplane, much less pilot one. So
cool.
that's really what happened. So you call it dumb luck, blind luck, whatever you will, but that's really what happened.
Where'd you grow up? What was where were you at the time?
I grew up in southeastern Wisconsin, Racine,
Oh, okay.
Wisconsin, kind of
Yeah.
situated about halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee. So
Mhm.
I'm a cheesehead, but grew up there, and there were no Air Force bases, military bases around, but
Very
I just
rural,
thought,
right? It's a kind of a rural area, not really
I
populous.
grew up kind of on the outskirts of town. You know, Racine was
Oh,
about
okay.
100,000 people back then, probably a little less. And but yeah, I just grew up near dairy farms and stuff like that, and worked on farms, and
Yeah.
ran around in fields and that kind of stuff. But did all the stuff that most kids do. You know, you played sports, baseball in the summer, and football, and basketball, all that stuff. So it was all good.
So you went to Notre Dame and ROTC?
Oh, actually, I didn't go to Notre Dame.
Oh, okay.
Again, thinking this is going to be easy, right? So I
Yeah.
applied at Notre Dame, and again, like I said, I wasn't burning up the course in school, so my SATs weren't very good.
Mhm.
So I ended up going to the College of St. Thomas up in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
Again, a place I had never been to. I
Sounds
visited before.
cold. Yeah, it just sounds
It
cold.
was cold. Yeah. But in and out of there in 4 years. And the funny thing about it is when I showed up, I'm 18 years old, and you just turned 18 in June. So I show up like the first couple days in September of 72. So I'm dating myself here, mover.
Mhm.
But I had like shoulder length blonde hair, and I looked more like a kid off the beaches of Southern California than the
That's
hayfields in Wisconsin. But I knew I wanted to go into ROTC, had already applied. And so after 2 days there, I go to the barber shop in the downstairs of Murray Hall. Still remember that. I just looked at the barber, a couple of them there. I go, take it off and give me a military grade haircut. And they look at me, they stop what they're doing, because this is kind of right in the middle of the height of the Vietnam War.
Yeah, war going on, a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah. And, ROTC wasn't popular on a lot of campuses, although at St. Thomas, actually pretty cool. But he looked at me, he says, are you sure you want me to do? I go, yeah, take it off. Because as soon as I leave here, I'm going over to their ROTC detachment and I'm signing up. Okay. 20 minutes later, golden locks laying on the floor. I march out of there, go over to the detachment 410, our Air Force ROTC at St. Thomas. And 4 years later, get my commission, and I'm on the pilot training several months later.
So this is still during the Vietnam War, right? So were
Yeah.
you thinking during this time, hey, I'm going to combat, or were you just wanting to fly planes? Had it crossed your mind?
It did, but not really. I think when you're that young, you think that it's something so far off.
Yeah.
I'm just excited about the prospect of going fly, and fly what? I had no idea. But yeah, that was kind of that December, linebacker too. That was downtown stuff, and the war stops. Several months later.
So you had no airplane experience at this point,
None.
right? So you had
Zero.
Did they send you to now they call it IFT or an IFS, where they send you to like a Cessna or something before you went, or was your first time in probably a tweet?
No, it's they did have a program. They call it the Flight Instruction Program in ROTC, and what they did is they contracted with actually it was with the University of Minnesota Flight Facilities out at Anoka County Airport in the northern part of the Twin Cities. So it was a 25-hour kind of a screening course, basically see if you have the aptitude to do it. So that's where I got my first 25 hours in a Cherokee 140.
That's awesome. I mean, did you catch the bug then, or were you like, let's see what jets are going to be like?
I mean, once I got airborne, I'm thinking, no, you got to be kidding me. This is, I get to do this. You kidding me? And this is just a little, Cessna 140. I mean, Cherokee 140, it was nothing. But just the allure of doing something greater, realizing that little by little, year by year, I'm getting closer to a goal that My
Mhm.
guidance counselor told me, "You will never do this."
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's how it happened.
that's awesome. And so you
Yeah.
went to pilot training where?
I went to Vance Air Force Base in Enid,
Hey,
Oklahoma.
me too. Enid,
Yeah,
America. That's
yeah, that's
awesome.
right. Vance by the sea, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, it's Kegelman air patch, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I went through there. Course, class 7804.
Oh my
So
gosh.
went there and did well in tweets. I was kind of maybe a little higher than middle of the pack in tweets. I actually busted my instrument check ride in a tweet.
Mm,
Uh, but something happened as soon as I went to the 38. I
mm,
still remember the day walking out to the flight line. The instructor takes myself and a couple of my other classmates out to a static 38, and we sit in it. And as soon as I sat in the 38, I still remember this. I told myself, I'm home. This is where I belong. And
that's
I just smoked the course from there out. Got all excellence. I think I was the only student to excellent all my check rides in the 38, burned it up, and finished at the top of the class. So who
that's
would have
awesome.
thought?
Yeah, that's amazing. And were there any like culture shocks or struggles during that time, or was it just, I mean,
No,
pilot training in
no,
general besides the instrument check? I mean, no
yeah,
air sickness, no nothing like that.
no, nothing. Just kind of like knock on wood. It all worked out well. Had
That's cool.
several guys, like I'm sure guys, gals now, and everywhere. A few people SIE. They go, hey, this isn't for me. I'm getting out. But
Yeah.
yeah, back then. So that was, I'm sure like you, everyone shows up and,
Mm,
the first couple of days there, you talk to your classmates and everyone's talking about what they want to do if they get their wings 52 weeks from then. And of
yeah.
course, just about everybody says, yeah, I want to be fly an F-15, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we all know the likelihood is, these people start falling by the wayside, little by little. To get at the top of the pyramid, it's going to be a long road.
Well, some of your instructors had to be Vietnam vets, right? Like had been flying, had come back from flying combat missions.
Yeah, there are a few of those guys. That's
Yeah.
there's not a lot of guys were FAPes, so there weren't too many of
Yeah.
those. But there were a few guys. I mean, the guys that were like flight commanders and squadron commanders and things like that, definitely. But you didn't have this. You didn't. I didn't see. I don't remember seeing anybody running around with a 100 mission patch on their arm over North
Right.
Vietnam. Those
Yeah.
guys weren't in their training command. They were over in TAC or something.
Yeah. So, getting towards the end of pilot training, had you decided what you wanted to fly? Like, were you knowing how you were doing? Were you like, this is the jet for me?
Yeah. I wasn't so presumptuous to think that I would be at the top of the class, because I knew I
Yeah.
was doing well compared to my classmates. That I'm sure we all kind of had a little cognizant of that. I knew I was doing real well. I didn't know how well until my flight commander, a guy named by the name of Art Schwall, great guy,
Mm.
calls me in. And the first thing he says to me as I close the door in this flight room there in H flight, he says, okay, Zettel, show me your left hand, spread it. I want to see if you can hold 8 throttles. And no kidding. And I'm shocked. And,
No, no.
I know. And he sees the surprised look at me. He goes, hey, don't worry about it. You're not going to fly a buff unless you really want one. So I sit down. He gets to it. So I had put down F-15 had been out for a couple of years,
Mhm.
but only in the previous 9, 10 months I'd been there, I think only 3 had actually come down to classes. So I knew that to ask for one, you'd have to be at the very top, and you didn't want to waste, we were told, our first choice if you weren't going to get one. So I'd actually put down F4 and then
Mm.
R4 and I don't know, whatever else. And so he's got my dream sheet in front of him, and he looks at me. He says, okay, Zettel, I see what you've got here. He says, where's the F-15? And
Mhm.
I look at him and I go, well, I didn't know I should put that down. And he says, well, if you don't put it down, you're never going to get it. And if anyone's going to get one, it's probably going to be you.
That's
And I
awesome.
was taken back. I mean, I was
Yeah.
really, because he's
Yeah.
basically telling me. So I
You're
said,
it.
okay, I'll have it back to you here in 30 minutes. Sure enough. In fact, when I was doing research for the book, I actually found that it's still in one of my files. That
That's
dream
awesome.
sheet, I still had it.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's so
could
cool.
Yeah,
for
it
you.
was wild to see that. Yeah, so
Yeah.
but assignment came down about a month later,
Hmm.
and no F-15s came down. And you know how the process works. It goes by rank and then alphabetically. At least it did in my day. And
Oh
so
God, anything alphabetical for a
yeah,
Z-man is probably not
yeah.
ideal.
So here I am, second balloon, Lieutenant Zettel, and I'm seeing all these things go back and forth. And the first two assignments are to the senior ranking officers of each section. They were both former Wizzos. Boom, there go two F4s, just like that. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
well, God, there's
Uh-oh.
two F4s. And then a smattering of tweets, 38s, a couple buffs, 135s. And a guy that I took my formation check ride with was great guy, Dave Eichhorn. I'll give a shout out to him. Dave and I took our formation checks together. We both got excellence. Great guy. The long arm of SAC reached out and grabbed him. And he stands
Oh.
up and they tell him, hey, Lieutenant Eichhorn, B-52 to Dias. And the whole room, the air just got sucked out of the room because they realized that Dave is in the running for, he could have easily gotten F4, F-15.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned this in the book, but selfishly, I'm a little embarrassed because I'm thinking, well, at least it's not me. But I felt sorry for the guy. But anyway, it goes down and on and on and on. I'm thinking, well, they haven't called out any F4s,
Hmm.
no F-15s. And it comes to me and it goes, Zettel, stand up. So I stand up and I'm going, now, you're going to be either hero or zero. And they announce F4 to Luke. So I run
Cool.
over, ring the bell, and buy around. And I couldn't have been happier, just to get an F4.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's how that happened.
So how was transitioning to the F4? I mean, that thing, I've always heard it's like a muscle car.
And that's a good analogy because that's how I kind of describe it in the book. If the T-38 is a sports car,
Yeah.
the Phantom's a muscle car. And
Yeah.
I mean, they all have their points, obviously, but it was an iconic fighter, as you know. And I still remember the first time I ever saw one. I was on my tweet cross country and I landed at Little Rock, Arkansas. And we pull up in the transit ramp and they park us in that little tiny tweet. And they park us right next to two Marine Corps F4s.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this and I'm going, God damn. So I get out and I'm almost embarrassed to be walking toward them. There's a couple Marine Corps guys, a couple of them are sleeping on the back of the airplane, one's stuffing a parachute in the to reload it, and they're getting ready to go somewhere. And I'm in awe. Anyway, so transitioning at Luke to the F4 was just amazing. I still remember cranking that beast up, and I'll leave you with a little funny thing here. First time, it's hot. It's like late September of 78. It's hot at Luke. It's got to be 100 degrees on the ramp. And you crank that beast up, and it's like a rhino. It just starts coming alive. And after coming from the 38, you're going, God damn. So anyway, I give the crew chief the sign, pull the chocks, and, he says, okay, run it up. So I'm trying to be real gentle, and it's not moving. And I'm thinking, damn, I don't want to blow anything away. Finally, over the intercom comes his voice. Guy's name is Gene Fadala, his major. He says, give it some effing power. I go, damn. So I cob the power forward and boom, I leap out of the blocks and make my turn. I go, well, but I still remember that. Yeah. Give it some effing power. Okay.
Yeah. That, so was this the time when they were doing Wizzos, or was it pilots in the back?
Yeah, we still had Wizzos. Yeah, we had Wizzos. In fact, they had pilots in the back, early days Vietnam and stuff like that. But later on, they transitioned to, weapon system officers. And so that's all, in my day in the Phantom, it's all we had, that was great. It was a neat way to get into, flying fighters and stuff. And especially in such an iconic warbird as the Phantom. Man, it was awesome.